Hey there. This week, more than ever, it's important that you know that we are a network of shows and not just this Bonfireside Chat deal. Specifically, if you get a chance, head on over and check out and subscribe to Watch Out for Fireballs. There's a special episode that has went up this week, and as you listen to this appendix about the Ring City, you're going to understand why I'm directing you there so directly, because we make some announcements. So I'm going to make room for that. Let's get to it right away. But yeah, check out Watch Out for Fireballs at watchoutforfireballs.com. We'll be waiting for you there as well.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
This is Gary Butterfield.
This is Kole Ross.
And this is Bonfireside Chat. It is a farewell favorite.
Yes, and this week we are talking about your responses to the Ringed City DLC in total. Gary, does it make sense to talk about the announcement that we just made on the Watch Out for Fireballs channel?
Yeah, like we should. We definitely should. Let's not go into it in full detail, but we should give the cliff notes and then point people towards that announcement.
Yeah. So we recently, I believe the Thursday before this episode comes out, made an announcement about the future of Watch Out for Fireballs and also the future of this show. Sorry, we did it on a feed that is not this one, but that is the way the schedule worked out.
So the schedule worked out, and then also it primarily affects, I guess it affects both these shows.
Yeah.
So a bunch of people have been asking, what's your plan? Like, for Bonfireside Chat after the Souls games go away? And the answer is we're going to also go away.
Yes.
Not really. Like, we'll still be here.
Yeah.
Games that would be covered will still be covered.
Yes.
We're just going to retire this show and fold all this stuff into Watch Out for Fireballs.
Yes. So if Bloodborne 2 comes out, that will be a fair game for Watch Out for Fireballs. So that will be a place where you can go and check this stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if Bloodborne 2 gets announced, if there are interesting Souls-likes, things like that, those will all show up on Watch Out for Fireballs, which is also going weekly. Mm-hmm. We talk about it in detail. You can check out that feed. I like to hope that people who listen to this also listen to Watch Out for Fireballs. If you don't, please give it a shot.
Yes.
I think you'll like it. Mm-hmm. I think that you'll appreciate that approach. And even if you just dip it in and out on things you're interested in, we've done things that have kind of Soulsy DNA. We've done Castlevania games, things like that.
Yeah.
Pop in and give it a shot.
Yeah. Yep. So and we're also changing the format of that. Like, we're doing themed months, and like we said, we're taking that weekly and kind of batching together the listener response things. It's all incredibly exciting. Like, I just the whole announcement episode, which you can see linked in the notes, is just us being very enthusiastic about this. Gary, we should talk about what how we're going to wind this down.
Yeah. So what's going to happen with the end of Bonfireside Chat?
Yes.
We have 3 more Souls-likes we're doing.
Yep.
We are doing Let It Die.
Neo.
Which both of those are going to be single episodes and appendixes each. And then we're going to do 2 episodes on Hollow Knight because we're both committed to beating that.
Yes.
And then an appendix on that.
Yeah. And then we are entering a final season, and one that we've actually alluded to in a couple of different places, both online, like in social media, and also in as part of episodes. Like, hey, what is the Omega Protocol? How do we pull the self-destruct sequence? And that is to do a victory lap season. Yeah,
absolutely. We talked about that. We are finally doing it, and it's also going to be kind of take the place of what we were going to do for Bonfireside Chat After Dark. That was a Patreon tier that was kind of considered when we didn't know exactly what a post-Souls universe of Bonfireside Chat would look like. So the people who are at that tier, who support us at that tier, are going to guest on a series of retrospective episodes covering the Souls games that we did prior to Dark Souls 3 in kind of reverse chronological order to when we did them.
Yes. So Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2, Demon Souls, and then ending on Dark Souls, the game that was so good that we couldn't not do a podcast about it.
Absolutely. So astute listeners will realize that's a cycle. We're starting the same way we began. These are going to have those guests, from the community, like just people who are Souls fans, and if you back at the tier where you get to ask questions and prompts, those are going to be in those appendixes. You can appendices. You can submit those. We're all going to talk about them. And if you, if you feel like the Dark Souls 3 season of the show has been a little bit oppressive and bleak, I can assure you, Cole and I think that too. And this is going to be coming up for air in such a big bad way that like I can hardly I've had to stop myself from restarting Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, because I don't want to get too far ahead.
Right.
We're both really excited to go back and kind of rediscover and relearn what made us fall in love with the series.
Yep. It's going to be a party.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a celebration. It's going to be kind of all inclusive too. So the episode will be a couple hours just talking about the game itself, like what it does well, like coolest parts, what things, some things maybe it didn't do as well, but mostly it's going to be positive because those are 4 games that we both really love. And then, talking about your questions and stuff too. You can write in with your thoughts generally about those games, also questions related to them, things like that. And it's going to be super fun.
Yeah.
I think it will be probably the most fun couple months of the show. If not, we've had really good runs. I think this will be the most fun that we've had.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
So it is bittersweet, right? We love this show. And people who came to us through this show, you're all super valuable to us. We've met a lot of really cool people through this show. And friends, like people who we're friends with now. That's how we met Jeremy Greer, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, come on.
It is, we're friends with people through this show. I would never trade that for anything.
No.
It just doesn't make sense to continue it without souls.
Yeah.
We're going to bow out gracefully rather than, fade out. We're going to not link the fire.
No. And instead, we are going to make our own painted world off to the side where we are doubling down on Watch Out for Fireballs. It's actually going to probably be more content in the offing compared to what Bonfireside Chat was. So, we're not just saying, yep, nope, we're just going to get rid of this commitment. We are taking this energy and effort and putting it into making Watch Out for Fireballs great. Making it as good as it can be.
Yes. Yeah. So, and we think that you'll like it. We really appreciate it. We mentioned in that episode you can listen to, we're doing a survey for everybody, for kind of listeners to the network in general.
Yeah.
You can check that out. There'll be a link in the show notes. Please go do that survey.
Yes.
It helps us out a lot. It's going to help us restructure our Patreon, which has to be restructured in the wake of this. We want to know what you want to see, what rewards you want, which tiers would be enticing. And we also have, we're doing it as a raffle kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
3 people who do the survey for us will get $20 Steam gift cards.
Yeah, that can buy a lot of good games, especially with the Steam sale coming up.
You can almost buy everything on Steam for honestly, $20 goes a long way in Steam bucks.
Yep. Yeah. So there are some big decisions that we have already made that are not going to be changed by the survey. We want you to understand that. You cannot, keep Tinkerbell alive by wishing Bonfireside Chat would stick around. We have resolved about that. We believe, and we're willing to take a risk that this is the best choice for the two of us and for the network. But there are a lot of small decisions that go into the way this kind of articulates that we really want to hear, what you think about. So, yeah.
So please do that. And hopefully you stick with us. Check out Watch Out for Fireballs. Even if you don't end up liking it, please give it a shot.
Yeah.
I'd really appreciate that. And I think you would. It's still just me and Cole doing the same thing. I think you dig it.
Yeah.
Unless you only play Souls games. If you're I don't play old games. Watch Out for Fireballs doesn't just do old games now, dog.
No.
We do everything. We're making it so it can be everything. And if we get that Bloodborne 2 announcement, that's where that's going to show up. And you better believe I am psyched to play Bloodborne 2.
Oh, yeah.
And it will get a full and respectful treatment.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, so that is the big stuff. Again, go listen to those. There's more detail in the episode. There is more opportunity for interaction in that survey. But we have miles to go before we sleep, Gary, because this is possibly the most that we've gotten in terms of feedback on a particular piece of Souls content.
And it's worth noting, kind of a corollary to that, is that if you wrote in and you're not getting read, it's not super personal. It's just we have more responses than we've ever had.
Yes.
So we really appreciate everyone who wrote in, but we can't read everybody. We've had to edit some of them, and some people have been admitted. It's not personal.
No.
It is just we got tons and tons of responses. Which makes sense because it's the last piece of content for the last Souls game and the last episode of Bonfireside Chat that is about a Souls game.
Yeah.
Or new Souls content before the Victory Lap season.
Right.
So totally makes sense. So thank you guys for writing in. We're going to go ahead and get started just because we've been recording for a little while and we want to get through these. But I am energized by these announcements.
Yeah.
I'm excited to read these appendixes. I'll read this first one because it's addressed to me.
Yep.
Nick says, via contact, this is follow-up. Gary seems really hung up on a painted world being a refuge in the Dark Souls 3 DLC. A couple of points on that. Ariamis was never explicitly said to be a prison. That's something that's extrapolated by the community, and the community can certainly be wrong. The mere fact of how difficult it is to enter may have made it an attractive place to hide unwanted things. Even if you assume Ariamis was a prison, there's nothing in the lore that says every painted world must be a prison. Nor is there anything wrong with the idea of a new painted world that was made for a different purpose. Obviously, this is far in the future, and Ariandel dreamed up a new painted world for the forlorn. There's nothing contradictory about that idea and the idea of Ariamis.
Yeah.
So to answer that in two ways, one of the reasons why I think it's a prison, other than that, like there is a lot of, it being a place to hide unwanted things. There's a lot of evidence for that. Like it has elements of a prison. There's a place off to your right where there are like cells dropped in, like cages.
Yeah.
In there, like it reads as a prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, and everything in the lore points to it being like a quarantine.
Yeah.
For things like for
things that are like inconvenient to the regime.
It can be like the community can be wrong. I don't think they're wrong there.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of like as far as Dark Souls 1 and suppositions go, like there's a lot of evidence for that.
Yeah. A pocket dimension doesn't necessarily have to be used, to lock things away. Like there's an easy way out. You just jump. You can get out. However, no matter how much time passed between Ariamis and Ariandel, like they are still trading on a thematic connotation that the first one had, we believe very strongly.
Yes. Yeah. So it is, if they did change it, which like to your second point, so even if you assume that I think if Ariamis is a prison, there's nothing in the lore that says every painted world must be a prison. There's nothing to say that it isn't either. Like, it's just kind of like, yes, it reminds me a lot of what we talked about with Richard in the last episode. Like you can possible is a huge wide space, and then if that's your metric, like everything falls under it.
Yeah.
Like it is possible that enough time has passed and someone can just make a painting that's another thing. We didn't really have lore about paintings before this. The things we did know, 100% of what we knew going into this was that it was a place to put things, like an extra dimensional place to put things that were dangerous.
Yeah.
And we knew that like at that, like a 90% level.
Yeah.
I felt pretty sure about that. Now it being the way it's presented in Dark Souls 3 is that they are explicitly places for forlorn, for sad things, which like, I'll admit, like the evidence, like you could, yes, it could be different. There's nothing that contradicts it. What's a cooler idea though? I don't know. Like there's part of it that is like, there's nothing to support that it is this thing or that it changed other than that it said it's new now, and what is a cooler idea? I don't know. So there's an element of headcanon to it.
Yeah.
I think that Ariamis is definitely a prison. I think point one, I think that I don't think you're right about that. Point two, you're right that like there's nothing that says it couldn't have changed. It just changing for no reason is immensely unsatisfying. Like just because it's possible doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So it not contradictory is not good enough.
Yep.
Would be my response to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on to responses about the DLC proper. I've kind of separated these just because it was important to me to kind of represent what we got in terms of feedback proportionally between kind of like positive, mixed, and negative. So, just so it's abundantly clear that we are not just picking stuff that agrees with us. Like towards the end of this, you're going to hear things, from people who are, much more, I think much more enthusiastic about the Ring City than we are. However, outside of those are people sharing some kind of interesting facts, things that I didn't know and didn't feel comfortable representing in the notes as my own thoughts. So like under the interesting category, we have Gustav, who has written in via contact to say, when I was first playing through the Ring City, I figured out who Lap was pretty much the same moment I met him above the ruins of the Earthen Peak, as I imagine most Swedish players did. What tipped me off, however, wasn't just his voice and his idiosyncratic sitting position, but simply his stated name. You see, in Swedish, the word lap isn't only, as I'm sure we're all well aware, a pejorative for the Aboriginal Sami population of northern Scandinavia and Finland, but also the word for a written note or patch of cloth. I'm honestly a bit puzzled as to why the localization team for the Ring City chose to give him a name that reveals his identity so clearly to a Swedish-speaking player. The game itself clearly frames the revelation of Lap's identity as a climactic twist, so why include a coded reference to that twist that's going to be obvious to any member of an admittedly very small portion of the player base?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I feel like you kind of answered it in the last bit.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't make it okay. It's just shitty, English centrism.
Yes. Yeah. But so much about him, like to the point of him saying, I'm unbreakable. Like it is presented as a twist, but it is one that like walks you through every single step to like where it is not pulling something that is entirely unexpected on you when he pulls off the helmet, but is like, I knew it.
Yeah. It's not a twist. It's like a slope.
Yeah.
Like you turn around slowly. It's a Kingsfield turn. Yeah. It's not a twist. And the reason why they probably were fine doing that little clue is because for a lot of people, that would be a neat little clue.
Yeah.
It's just kind of shitty that they, it had to be a language and some people are going to speak it.
Yeah.
Something I didn't notice when reading this, and I don't think this was a hint, but like you do run into to Pete in Earthen Peak.
Weird.
That's his predecessor from Dark Souls 2. Like he does show up there. That's a part of like kind of a, for like his lack of quest line, but he shows up like near, just outside the windmill.
Yeah, you're right. No, that's really cool. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, a little bit to my answer. And like when I was complaining about it in the main episode, like why they'd use Earthen Peak, like it doesn't mean there weren't other areas where Pete showed up, but that's actually kind of like, that's not terrible.
Yeah, that lines up at the very least. Yeah, no, that's that is good. And I don't know. I'm going to say it's subtle because I didn't notice it, but who knows? Like I just yeah.
It's subtle. Other things maybe aren't. Yeah. So the grand kind of preponderance of things ends up being extremely unsubtle.
Yeah. But thank you for writing in because I don't know Swedish. I don't know what people call but that is cool to know. I love trivia like that. I also love like linguistic stuff like that. So thumbs up.
Super cool. Rich says via contact. While at the time of writing I've not completed the Ring City DLC, I want to voice my appreciation for a neat little visual reference in the newest Godzilla movie, 2016's Shin Godzilla. As someone who grew up watching Toho's Godzilla movies, Shin Godzilla quickly became one of my favorites in the series, and in this, one of the best quarters in gaming, the new Godzilla's unique take on the atomic breath is referenced in two games, Nier Automata,
Yep, there you go. You got it, right?
Yeah,
Nier Automata.
Why did I doubt it? And then Dark Souls 3's The Ring City. This manifests as a thick plume of flame thinning out into a thin laser, like if a water cutter was powerful enough to cut several buildings. While Game of the Year contender Nier Automata, see, now I'm doubting myself.
Oh yeah, no, you're in your head.
Hopefully this is the only time that like this comes up in this response. Now Nier A Squad, Nier 2. I like Nier 2. Yeah, I know it's just April. Is more overt in its reference, replicating even the color change in its neat optional monster. Medeiros' own flame visually meshes in a very Dark Souls 3 way. I'm just happy to see two developers I really enjoy share my own passion for quality Godzilla movies.
Yeah. No, we didn't talk about it, but Medeiros' flame is super cool, even though kind of in a series that has been full of flame lasers since Dark Souls 2 with what's his name, the old Iron King. It didn't like stick out to me. I didn't recognize that it was a visual quote. But yeah, I could totally see that. Also, that is present in the Metal Gear Ray stuff in Metal Gear Rising.
Oh yeah, correct. Yeah, very cool. I've heard good things about the new Godzilla, and part of me wants to see it because the old Godzillas, which I've watched, like I think they're old movies, so I think I don't like the pacing of them. Mm-hmm. Like I like watching big monsters smash stuff, but I don't like watching people talk about it. And a new, like a modern one that's going to have at least like a snappier sense of pacing, probably.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not a Godzilla dude, but I'm sympathetic to Godzilla and Godzuki.
Yeah. So let's get into the negative responses. People who were critical of the Ringed City, starting with our friend and yours, Jeremy Greer, who writes in via contact saying, "The Ringed City proves something that I've suspected since I finished Dark Souls 3. I don't care about Dark Souls 3. The base game is fine and plays very well, but the stuff that I like about Dark Souls seems to have been pushed aside for a new era of Souls. An era with bosses with excessive HP, lore tidbits that don't seem to be connected or well thought out, And now, with the Ringed City, I can't even take my time to absorb the environments carefully as I play. As a guy who talks about Dark Souls a lot, it's all incredibly disappointing. I don't begrudge people that do like it, of course. This game was apparently made for them. The folks who genuinely seem to have fully bought into Namco Bandai's Prepare to Die marketing campaign. I'm happy that they have a truly difficult Souls experience that they apparently want. If you need me, I'll be playing Dark Souls 1 and eating just some basic-ass non-branded chicken wings and waiting for my spiritual successor to Bloodborne. Umbasa, Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I largely feel the same way.
Yep.
You know, it's very hard for me to get worked up about, like, I think Dark Souls 3 will go down as the first Souls game that I'm not going to replay.
Yep.
I didn't feel like a weird regret. Like, every Souls game is installed on one of my machines. I had to uninstall Bloodborne because I needed space for Dark Souls 3. I've now swapped those two things and everything feels right in the universe.
Right.
And I just like, it's really hard because outside of a couple moments, it never touched my heart. Like you know, when I think about what touches my heart in Dark Souls games, it's this thematic kind of thing. It's not individual scenes, you know, it's themes that like really hit me.
Yeah.
And the fact that like with 3, you know, the theme, if I really think about it, at 3 and the DLC of 3, it's a theme that we've already dealt with. Like, it just doesn't feel new.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, it is the first Dark Souls that didn't touch my heart at all. And that's important.
Yep.
You know?
It really is. And that, like, Dark Souls 2 touched my heart like crazy.
Yeah. You know, and maybe it didn't, you know, and it didn't for other people. Like, a lot of people hate that game. But like that kind of, you know, this extended, really leaning into the all-timers, like, identity part of Souls, like that, you know, that has pathos.
Yes.
For me, individual moments in Dark Souls 3 have tons of pathos, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
So, like,
yeah. I mean,
you know,
like the twin princes.
Yeah. Like, that's such a good moment, but it's really hard for me to like care about what comes around it. Like, it is a real context matters kind of illustration for me.
Seeing Gwendolyn's corpse being used as a puppet by a blob. Yeah.
Super cool. Like, one of the greatest moments. And it just all comes down to that weird sense of confusion that, like, you know, like Richard said, where like Dark Souls 3 doesn't know what it's about. Those little details like that are actually 1,000 times cooler than what the game ended up focusing on more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it knows what it's about. It's about reminding people, hey, isn't Dark Souls 1 really good?
Well, yeah, and also like you thought this was hard, you know, which is like leans into Jeremy's point, which is like such a big thing, you know. And even anytime we say that, we're here's a pro tip for people: if somebody's like, "This is hard," your response should not be "That's not hard." Like, that's not explicitly saying get good, but that's garbage, and don't do that.
Yep.
Like, I don't see why that's hard. It's like, well, does that matter? Like, other people think it's hard. Yeah. You know, so like their response to it, their action to it is going to be informed by that, you know?
Similarly, if we strip away all of the like all of the controversy around Dark Souls 3, the response to somebody saying, man, the Capra Demon is really hard, isn't, hey, spend 15 minutes throwing dung pies over the wall.
Yeah. Just use a kukri. Like that's, you know, that's not great. And also just like the Capra Demon's not hard should not be your opening thing. No. Like it just like somebody's sitting there having difficulty with something and you're just like, you know, with anything in life and just being like, your experience is invalid. Here's how you get past it. How about just your experience is valid. Here's how you get past it. You'll seem like less of a dick. Yeah. You know, and that's just, as somebody who does this Dark Souls podcast, who thinks Dark Souls 3 is really hard, got a lot of people who have come up and just been like, this actually isn't hard. And it's such a belittling thing. Yeah. You know, it's frustrating. Like, it's fine for you to have a different experience. It's even fine for you to say, like, I didn't have that experience. Let's talk about, here's what I did to do it. Yeah. You know, but just don't be like, it's not, your reality of this is not true. Yeah. It's just like kind of a garbage thing.
I will quote Griffin McElroy from his pinned tweet, which is, Twitter is the butt that we use to shit on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, it is just a place, you know, it's this weird thing where like people don't, you know, have this kind of like decorum. Yeah. That I wish they had. Yeah. Which is fine. Like, I mean, I get it, but just like in general, I think that is a good way to be. Yeah. To listen to me. But that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, don't listen to Gary. Listen to me. Gary's right.
Yes. And Jeremy's right. Yeah. Tom says via contact. I have to say, as a fan of both Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, I really love that the Ring City finally brought the two together in loving tribute. The copy/paste enemy structure from Lost Izalith found its match with the Shrine of Amana style turret run. Truly, this is the best way to end the series. As for the rest of the DLC, I felt like it did sum up Dark Souls 3 for better or worse. another sword berserker as a final boss, a brand new daughter of Gwyn we haven't heard of before, and the game going, hey, remember Earth and Peak? Maybe it is best that the age burns and we start anew. I know I am ready for that.
Yeah, well, at least for the podcast, have we got an answer for you?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well said. It is, and this, I say that as somebody who like borderline loves Shrine of Amana and likes Lost Izalith.
Yeah.
So,
oh, you fucking shill. You like Shrine of Amana?
I think Shrine of Amana is really cool.
Yeah, gosh, yeah, you're being paid off by Big Namco.
Yeah, George Soros is paying me for George Soros is the one who pays us for to love.
He's making pot more strong. Yeah.
Paid podcasters from George Soros who like just, but
yeah.
It is that echoes some problems that I had with it as well.
Yeah. I mean, specifically like the turret run thing. Like they've done that at least 3 times before. Shrine of Amana, Old Yarnum, and also the Hunter's Nightmare. Yeah,
and even in the in Shrine of Amana, like I dodge all those magic bullets. Like I'm not saying that like get good if you can't do that, but like
no, you can't. Like it is signaled. You can hear those things being fired from across the map.
Yeah. You can. Yeah, I can do it by sound.
Yeah.
With a decent pair of headphones or without. Any kind of decent speaker, I can do that by sound, where it's just much harder to dodge these things. And really, that's not even like I don't even hate the angel turret, like as we talked about. It's just that it goes on for so long.
Yep,
that sucks.
Yeah, and it's one of like many mechanics that accomplish the same thing, which Jeremy talked about, and we talked about at length. Like, just move along, nothing to see here. Yeah. Man, let's see here. Bob writes in saying, I've never hated a Souls product before, but I hated this DLC. I quit several times, trudging my way through. It was a miserable experience, as if From were trying to make the fan base glad the series is over. It was like the archers from Dark Souls 1, but time and again for hours. It's a good thing the series is over, because after this debacle, I'm not sure that I would buy another Souls game. And I've never thought that I would say that.
Yeah.
I'd probably still buy another Souls game. But I mean, certainly, we're stopping the show. I would want to do it, but I would not want to have the obligation to spend 9 months with it. Yeah.
I will play anything. Like if From puts out literally another just Dark Souls, if they just lied and put out Dark Souls 4, and even if the marketing is like, you thought the Ring City was tough, I will still probably play it, because like the things I get from it are still kind of unique and cool.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean I'm going to like it. I would hate for that to happen.
Yeah.
That's my fear with them, either with a Bloodborne 2 or any kind of Souls like they do, is that they are stuck in this difficulty treadmill.
Yeah. And not to make every response about our decision to stop the show, like we expressed a very similar experience. We are heartbroken about what has happened. Like that is the only the way I can sum up the way that I feel about my favorite series moving past me. Like it is leaving a void. It seems like there are decisions they could make that wouldn't be the case, but they're just different priorities and different values.
Yep.
Irreconcilable differences.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. An annulment.
Yeah.
Which is, and again, like, so it's still interested, but it's sad.
Yeah.
I really hope that doesn't happen. I mean, honestly, like, I really hope that they don't do another Souls like people keep going back and forth telling me they definitely will. Like I would love it if they just took a break from that for 5 years. Like let other companies do this, and then or just explore that design space you like in a different genre. Like it doesn't have, because I just can't imagine them dialing back this like the super hardness. Like it's weird because as Jeremy said in his response, like there are people for whom that's for.
Yep.
All the big streamers and PvP guys are like overjoyed about this stuff. This is like Lobos's favorite thing that the game's ever done. Peverson, it's like his favorite thing the game's ever done.
Yeah. Those are both people that we like. We are not resentful that they're getting something that makes them happy.
Not at all. Like I like those guys are super nice. I love those dudes.
Yeah.
Like, they're like super nice guys. They're really talented. They're just like 0G. They've been training in 0G. Like they're professional fighters, and this is a thing that requires that you fight professionally. Whereas I am a decent fighter who also spends a lot of time like reading a book in the corner of the room and the ring, and there's no book.
Yeah.
The book is written like the book from Seven. That's a metaphor.
I didn't follow you there, but I'm going to trust you.
It's not great. Like it's not good metaphor. Kevin says via contact. Oh boy, where do I even start with this one? As someone who's always appreciated the difficulty but never found it a sole focus, I just don't think this DLC is for me. Despite being able to kill all the basic enemies very quickly, the Dark Eater just won't die. He takes the dubious honor of being the only boss I've never been able to solo in the franchise. He moves too quickly, he has such a limited verb set, and he just takes and deals out way too much damage. I really love his whole aesthetic and all, but Dark Eater is a really shitty end to a DLC I found disappointing. And don't get me started on Gale, a guy who I barely understand, but is somehow supposed to be the triumphant final battle that the series deserves. I guess this is what I should expect from the guys who made Soul of Cinder. Personally, I love all the Souls games, even if I think the sequels were both weaker in their own ways. But I'm glad the series might finally be given a rest here, at least for now. The last thing we need is for this series to live long enough to become hollow.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah. I don't as much as I like Gale as a fight more than I like Soul of Cinder, and he has a little bit more pathos because he's at least a character.
Yeah.
Neither of them compare to the end bosses of anything else that's come before to me. Like I don't particularly care about them as characters, and like even as fights, I don't love them. Like they're decent. Yeah. Soul of Cinder is a decent boss fight. Like it's in the past section of the pass fail boss fights in Dark Souls 3, and Gale is better, even like a better boss fight. Yeah. Than that even if it's a little bit too harsh, but like it's not the height of the powers of this thing.
Yeah. So it's been a long time since I fought Sin, so it's hard for me to say why that is such a more successful fight than Dark Eater Midir is. But fighting Midir, both on my own and then also, co-op with people, like it is just the same stuff procced over and over again. Like I wish that there was more variety. I wish that there was something on top of that.
He's something in between Ancient Dragon and Sin, where he's got more moves than Ancient Dragon does. Like Ancient Dragon has 4 moves, and that's why Ancient Dragon sucks. But he has that same kind of like everything is ramped up to 11 as far as damage and consequence. So it becomes a patience test. It's not as much of a patience test as Ancient Dragon, but it's still way more of a patience test than Calamite or Sin. Yeah. As far as dragon fights go in the series, like it's funny going back. Like it's going to be so weird going back to like Calamite, because Calamite is comparatively like just super doable. Like I think that fight's really fun and good. Yeah. But it's not. It's hard, but it's not that hard.
Yeah, I thought Calamite was incredibly difficult the first time that I tried him. I don't think it's going to be Baby Town Frolics because each game has different mechanics.
Is that the thing?
Oh no, that's an Archer reference. Gotcha. Yeah. No, it's I don't think it's going to be like a walk in the park, but I fired up Bloodborne and I got through to the Bloodstar Beast without dying once.
And I mean the difficulty ramping is real. Like another thing, just not to be like Gary's prescriptive corner, but like another thing that I'm pretty sick of seeing this season of Dark Souls are things are just like, no, it's never changed. like oh, you're wrong, like it's the same, it's always been. Everything you're complaining about is just in your mind. Like it's that same kind of thing where it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't need to be gaslit about a thing that I've spent hundreds of hours thinking about.
Literally, like, and I just have the sense, and I try not to be arrogant. I know I'm not always successful at that, but I just have the sense of like, who are you talking to? It's not, at the very least, like, even if you don't, I'm not an expert. You shouldn't recognize any kind of expertise, but at the very least, like, I've put in the time to gain some kind of modicum of respect where I've earned my take on the thing. Yeah. Without having to be, that's not even the case. It's never changed. The lore is exactly as silly it's always been. Like, never mind. But trying to invalidate my point rather than engage with it. Like, it is a shitty, condescending thing to do. Yep. And don't, that kind of thing comes up with difficulty all the time too. Yeah. I recognize I'm coming off as really defensive in this. This is my last chance to air all of my grievances of shitty Twitter drive-bys.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Careful man tries to dodge the bullet while a happy man takes the walk. I'm taking a walk. Fuck it. Yeah. Nathan writes, when I first played the DLC, I got caught up in the hype and enjoyed the lore implications of creating a new painting with the Dark Soul. Until I attempted to explain it to a friend who had yet to play the DLC, and I realized how unearned the whole idea was. At no point in the series did we get the indication that the Dark Soul could be used as a painting material. And the ultimate payoff is talking to a side character who tells you, in a flat tone, thanks. What a humongous letdown to a series that felt like it always cashed its checks.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know. Like, I'm fine with them introducing a new idea about, like, hey, here's an unexpected use of the Dark Soul. I just wish that it had any basis outside of this, outside of the DLC itself.
Yeah. And then the real answer for that, and we brought this up a bunch of times in the episodes, is it wasn't planned at the time. Like, it's not like in the beginning when they first started referring to the Dark Soul, they ever conceived of this stuff.
Right.
And whenever that kind of thing happens and you have to kind of retcon stuff, a successful retcon makes it seem like it could have been planned all along. Mm-hmm. An unsuccessful retcon clings on your brain because it's like nothing previous really supports this. Mm-hmm. Maybe it doesn't like contradict it, but it doesn't support it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're experiencing there. Like, that's why it feels flat, because it's like, oh, like this just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Kind of a bummer. Yeah. Gabriel says, for most of the season, I thought you guys were being a bit harsh, even though I could see where you were coming from. Dark Souls 3 was the first Souls game that I ever clicked with on a mechanical level, not counting Bloodborne. So the story stuff didn't really bother me. I watched lore videos and Let's Plays of the old games, but none of the inconsistencies in the writing in 3 bugged me that much. The Ring City changed that. Not only was it too aggressively, ball-crushingly hard,
my balls.
Making it, my balls, I've been crushed, making it no longer fun for me to play, but the story stuff was just straight up nonsense. No amount of mental gymnastics could make it fit for me. It's like they put a different game at the end of their game. It's everything you guys said about the rest of the game condensed into one compact package of shit. It's a good thing that this is the last Souls game, because with them leaving things like this, I wouldn't be coming back anyway.
Yeah.
Which, it's funny, like, putting me as somebody who doesn't like Dark Souls 3 that much, like putting me in a sense to be defensive about it, because it's like, I don't like it either. Like, I don't know, like, this wasn't the final straw for me. This seems about par for the course. Like, I didn't think the Ring City was that much worse as far as nonsense goes.
Yeah. There are stretches of Dark Souls 3 that are really, really good. Like, think Undead Settlement through Cathedral of the Deep.
Well, and when we say good, we're talking about lore specifically. Like, when you say that you just clicked it with you mechanically, like,
oh yeah, like, that's true. Yeah.
A common thread of people who really like Dark Souls 3, like, literally just don't care about what's like the context. Like, it just doesn't matter to them, which is like, that sounds like I'm being dismissive. That's totally fine.
No, yeah, I mean, it's not our approach to it, and like, that is one of the reasons why this particular game would be confounding to us when it wouldn't be to other people. Again, just different values. That is something that we cannot account for, and would be cumbersome to say, like, hey, this makes us angry, but it might not make everybody angry.
This is a section where the mechanics have kind of caught up to some of the story stuff, right? So like, there are people who, I'll be like, one of the things I don't like about Dark Souls 3 is the build variety is kind of shit. Mm-hmm. And someone will be like, I literally don't care about build variety. And that's valid. Like, I play through the games the same way. This happens to be the way I like to play. Like, the game is made for that. That's great. Yep. And people who just like want that level design, like, that level design is really good. Mm-hmm. But this is the first time that the mechanics have actually, I feel like, crossed into the zone where even people who don't do this all the time are going to be a little bit irritated, because it is so much harder and so different and so weird. Kind of mechanically, like, it's taking you and turning you into us, which is the point of the response. But I can see how it happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see here. Harley writes, the Ring City retroactively eats into the previous game's lore to such a degree that it makes me think From actively hates the Dark Souls lore community. One moment in the DLC encapsulates this perfectly. That fucking statue of Gwyn handing a crown to the furtive pygmy. In one fell swoop, it buried half of the lore of the previous games. Now everything revolves around Lord Gwyn. Pygmies, far from being easily forgotten, fought in the war with the ancient dragons. There were pygmy kings, and Manus was just some dude. There's another abyss dragon. There's another acrobatic dark-tinged swordsman. And worst of all, a random painter and Gale, people we barely know, have taken over Aldia's work of balancing light and dark. The entire second game, hundreds of hours of dialogue, item descriptions, and delicate storytelling is ignored in favor of two people who have maybe an hour of lore between them. Gale and the painter simply do not earn this lofty lore status, and it insults the intelligence of players to argue otherwise. Yeah, it is a weird, massive retcon. Like, it's not, I argued against doing this in the past, but like, I largely just don't consider like Dark Souls 3 touching any of my Dark Souls 1 headcanon stuff. Like, I'm not the biggest headcanon guy, but I'm just like, oh, this seems like nonsense. And it's so much less cool that I don't want to deal with it. Yeah. And part of that is lack of attachment to like what the text would be, with this new one. And that even came up in like Bloodborne. There are things about Bloodborne's lore that I just decided not to care about and squint my eyes and appreciate the kind of meaning, the theme rather than the text.
So like something about like where Kane Hurst fits in, or where the details of the Thumerians, like I don't think that matters to me. It doesn't impact my enjoyment. If I squint my eyes in Dark Souls 3, like I've said this before, like if you squint, it becomes the themes of Dark Souls 1 again. Mm-hmm. So it just becomes, me making those stretches isn't really worth it. And me getting the concrete information, like finding all those connections, also does not lead me to new thematic conclusions.
Yeah.
So I just don't bother. Yeah.
I
mean, I'm reading this and I'm like, why didn't we talk about this kind of retcon with the pygmies? And it's like, I realized I just don't think we did a little bit.
Oh, we did. Yeah. I mean, like I'm incredibly frustrated that Manus is now some dude, as Harley very adequately, very aptly put it. The Abyss and the Dark Soul being this representation of humanity and, this temptation toward a huge, cosmic force, like Manus and the daughters of Manus being pieces of him, like I thought it, like being the Dark Soul, being spread out and spreading that corruption and, spreading worship of this and undermining existing kind of structures of society. Like that was an amazing thing. It was an awesome thing to like carry this idea forward and articulate on, and to have that be forgotten, like that seems like such a huge waste. And like there's a little bit of that, like the Abyss is present here in the Ring City, but like it is such a backseat kind of idea to something that I think is less interesting, than Manus, while also just having them do Manus again with Gale. Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't bother me that much, because I'm just like, oh, this is like Gaiden. Like I'm playing Dark Souls Gaiden. I'm not playing, a canon sequel, because and the reason why Dark Souls 2 got away with that shit is because it was not trying to relate to it. Like everything was so far in the future that it was just aeons past and nobody understands history. And that was fine.
Yeah.
Oh, you remember the great beauty that was Elizabeth. Like that's such an important item description, because it encapsulates so much of the relationship between Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1. Mm-hmm. And Dark Souls 3 just decided to go doing something different. And in a weird way has just decided to like make so many things be like, purposely contrary to assumptions that the community made.
Yeah.
And like, yes, the community can be wrong.
Yeah.
But is the thing that actually we have instead, is it better or cooler?
Yeah.
Like no. Like super not.
They shouldn't kowtow to community interpretations, if those things would make them make a better or worse thing. I got my double negatives there. They shouldn't let the community dictate them into making a worse thing.
Yeah. If it is just kind of contrarianness, which like it doesn't, sometimes it feels like, specifically the Solaire stuff.
Yeah.
Like the weird evidence that like Solaire has something stupid has happened to Solaire that's like not airtight or anything, but like even just taking away his Gwyn son status and just being, oh no, it's another dude you never heard of.
Yeah.
Here he is. Like, that was a tenuous lore connection from the community, but there wasn't a reason to undo it. I don't feel like.
Yeah. I don't feel entitled to have whatever conjecture we find or make be canon, but again, it I don't know, feels spiteful. It doesn't feel great. I don't want to ascribe intention to it, but it
just doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
This is me.
I believe so. Yeah.
Liam, this is our friend Liam from the Slack channel. Mm-hmm. Liam says, "Hi, Richard Pilbeam likely already brought this up, but in case he didn't, the Half-Light Spear of the Church fight is actively hateful if you don't live in the United States or Japan. As a player from Australia, I was routinely backstabbed when the spear was in front of me or fell right at the end of the fight due to other latency issues. If this were an optional boss, then fine, I could ignore it. But as the second last encounter in the series, having a fight that provides for a vastly different experience based on a significant factor out of the player's control, i.e. geography, is at best poor game design and at worst an act of spite. This boss is my least favorite in the Souls series and contributed significantly to the absence of any form of enjoyment from this DLC. Get fucked, Souls."
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. He's talking about online players and lag being a factor.
Yeah.
In that fight.
Yeah. That is terrible if you live in Australia. Like you just can't engage with main content.
Yeah. Like shitty internet and having lag problems and because we've had a PvP kind of focused, two other PvP focused mandatory fights. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember hearing this complaint about either of those.
Yeah. They may have been there. It may have been the case.
I think that maybe they were just more likely to, it might actually be a fact, like a double-edged sword of the connectivity being better or the matchmaking being better, where in Dark Souls 2 or in Demon Souls, if it couldn't make the match because of like shitty internet, it would just port in the default.
Yeah.
Guy. And this, the connectivity is good enough to get somebody in, but not good enough to like actually do the predictive gameplay shit to make backstabs work.
Yeah.
Whatever that word is for like your computer modeling what the other computer is about to do.
Yeah, like just the weird like chunking or predictions. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Liam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now on to the middle Mama Bear responses.
Yeah. So we got the Venom out mostly, but there's some people here who have kind of split opinions. So Matt writes in saying, I think this DLC finally pushed my boundary for unnecessary difficulty. I've never felt that vanilla Dark Souls 3 was unfair. Perhaps maybe Nameless King, but he is optional. And continued holding that belief until I got to Elfrida. I thought maybe this was just a hiccup, but unfortunately I feel that all of the Ring City DLC is far too punishing. My biggest complaint, however, would be that, yet again, From Software screwed up a covenant. To wall off a covenant that needs participation behind a very bullshit boss is mind-boggling. The only reason that I could think of this being a good decision would be that they wanted a Spear of the Church to be an above-average player when they were summoned. I believe that this ties to my initial complaint of the whole DLC being unfair, and I am not on board with the decision if that was the case. Aesthetically, however, the DLC was very beautiful, and I did enjoy some of the lore bits. Yeah. Not going to take the aesthetics away. There are parts of this that are just fucking astonishing.
Yeah, like jaw-dropping. It's really, really good looking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the idea of it being, I mentioned this when I was complaining about that Spear of the Church fight, where like only the best of the best people are going to be sent up to fight you. Mm-hmm. You can summon anyone for help, but only the people who have beat what is arguably the hardest boss in the series, can actually, and they're just like loaded for bear because it's a troll covenant.
Yeah.
And it is made to just be as hard as possible, in some kind of misguided sense of climax.
I want to say it would feel much better if they instead put the Covenant item behind Gale. If the fight wasn't optional and just kind of like, hey, you've seen what happens when you wake up Filianor, and instead made it narratively justified by like, okay, now go and stop other people from doing this. That gets rid of the of Midir. That gets rid of a significant kind of incentive for beating Midir. But I think the people who are beating Midir oftentimes are doing so to say they did it anyway. I don't see that much of a functional difference between putting it behind one or the other.
Cool. What are they trying to say?
What?
Why are they beating Midir? What do they want to say?
They want to say that they did it.
Okay, I was trying to bait you into doing the voice. I'll beat my dear now.
Gary, was me right or wrong?
You were me was right. Was me right or wrong? But yeah. I think that's true. I also think that like they wanted to kind of ramp up the reward for Midir.
Yeah.
So they give it this thing, but the fact that it is explicitly kind of a hateful reward drives me nuts. Like it is, just hey, fuck over other players.
Yeah, like so like they didn't feel the need to do that with the Archdragon, or sorry, not the Archdragon, but the Eternal Dragon. What's his fucking name? The Ancient Dragon and Dark Souls 2. So many adjective dragons. Like so that just got you some lore, and also got you one of the Souls of the Giant if you wanted to make the final bosses easier.
Yeah, if you want to make Vendrick.
Vendrick easier, yeah.
I mean, it's and like it's kind of weird. It reminds me, it's kind of, you can do an interesting kind of comparison between what happens when you beat Calamite versus Midir.
Oh yeah.
Midir allows you to do this covenant that allows you to fight and kill other players. Calamite gives you a ring that makes the game harder for yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like, I like challenge, I want to be challenged more, versus I like challenge, I want other people to be challenged more.
Yeah.
Like they're very different philosophies of things. And like they'd already given you the Calamitous Ring, like that's already happened. They couldn't just do that again. But I feel like those are very different. Both of them are kind of like, non-mandatory rewards for moving forward there, just for people who want the challenge. But like, I just feel like they're different philosophies.
Yeah.
Jacob or Jakob, like it's got a K, so I'm not sure which one it is. I apologize if I guess I did mispronounce it and I pronounced it right.
Yeah.
I did.
You covered your bases. You're fine.
I covered some bases. Says via contact. I was really taken aback by how I felt going through this DLC the first time. I'd say that aside from the angels doing a bit too much damage and the bosses and some enemies all generally having too much HP, I felt like, aside from the HP thing, the bosses are all actually fairly easy to learn. Gale specifically is a duel that is complicated at first glance, but the gimmick here is the spectacle itself. If you can zero in on what he's actually doing and not the bells and whistles, his attacks are all fairly basic. You can block most of his moves, and he's even fairly easy to stagger. Overall, though, it suffers from the same problems Dark Souls 3 does as a whole. The stuff it presents isn't inherently bad or poorly presented, but it's a retread, and because of that, it doesn't have much value. Dark Souls 3 as a whole makes more sense as a companion piece to Dark Souls 1 than it does its own work. All it seeks to do is drill in any themes from the first game that you may have missed, and it always does it elegantly. The Ring City is the same in this regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how elegantly it does it, actually. Like, I'm not trying to be just contrarian, but I'm happy to agree to disagree about that. But I don't think that... Yeah, I think that it is a too broad of a brush. Mm-hmm. And some things like... So the Ring City that is trying to, underline the themes of Dark Souls, somehow. Mm-hmm. With that, with the idea of like, oh, you're going to be able to do this kind of primordial medium and make this new place. I can't think of a moment in the game that felt more meaningless than being able to paint that new world and have it just be another painted world.
Right.
That didn't underline any themes for me.
Well, while you're literally in a room that is burning down.
Yeah, because the old painted world was a nightmare. Yeah. Like, that is the theme of Dark Souls. Like, it is that, where this kind of entropy is inevitable. But I don't feel like that's a better way of presenting it than Dark Souls 1 was. Yeah. Like, having the same serpents at the end of both endings. Mm-hmm. In Dark Souls 1, or having the good serpent at the end of the bad ending, quote unquote, just to be reductive. Dark Souls 1 was way more elegant to me. Yeah. Of that idea that like this, or even just again George Soulzos is like paying me off for this, but like even the base ending of Dark Souls 2, like the fact that it doesn't actually matter what you do here, right? Because this kingdom has been on the ruins of millennia of kingdom. Like, that was a more elegant way of putting that theme to me.
Yeah.
And that's
agreed. Kyle writes, Thanks to fellow Souls community member Jeremy Greer, my time with the Ringed City DLC was much shorter and more enjoyable than most. Allow me to set the stage. I had just finished a 7-day stretch of work, and, though deeply exhausted, sat down to play the supposed final piece of Dark Souls content for the foreseeable future. I managed to get to the ridiculous Earthen Peak area, and those angelic hate turret angels, paired with with some extremely poorly designed / signposted areas bogged down my progress. I made it to the bonfire and took the plunge, but the Demon Boss 2 Electric Boogaloo edition stopped me dead in my tracks. I had already had enough. I took a break and ate dinner and gave it another shot later that night. Thankfully, Jeremy was available to help, and while waiting for him to accept my invite, I grabbed a random white summon and finished the Demon Prince. The rest of the night was a hilarious blur of my exhausted slap happiness and Jeremy polishing off a 6-pack of beer as he guided me through the Ring City proper. I remember laughing hysterically at the half-chicken, half-cath statues littering the city. The spear boss was a pushover, as whoever the game summoned was either AFK or lagged to the point of non-movement, as I gleefully backstabbed them over and over until the fight was finished. Hey, maybe that was Liam.
Yeah, totally.
We tried Gale probably 20 times, laughing maniacally at what would have been a source of pure frustration and impossibility if I was just playing solo. It just became even more hilarious as we failed over and over again to his titanic HP bar and absurdly overwhelming attacks. Once, we got him down to a magic pixel of health before his stupid red Santa cape wiped both of us out in one fell swoop. We eventually called it a night, and I finished Gale later after some leveling up, and yet another random co-op partner helped me through. Let me be clear. I definitely wouldn't have finished the DLC or gained what small closure it offers if it wasn't for Jeremy and his generous drunken sunbrewing. But in the end, something that would have been an exercise in frustration and disappointment became an experience about community.
Yay!
Yeah. Jeremy's great. I spent enough time talking about this during the episode, but I only finished the chalices because Jeremy helped me through the shitty defiled stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up doing a lot of that by myself, but Jeremy helped me with a good section of it too.
Yeah.
And I wish I had help. Like I tried to summon help for all those things. Like, a lot of times when we complain about boss difficulty, people will be like, "Well, just summon," and it's like we're
trying. We're trying so hard.
Well, like we're either trying or like, something can be like just the fact that you can summon doesn't paper over every design decision because not every boss is designed to be fought with a summon. And this is common. This has been true in the Souls thing, and it's always been true. Is that like having an extra person there breaks some of the bosses?
Yeah.
Like they become comically easy because they can't focus on multiple things at a time. And that's always been true. So it can still be a boss that is worth complaining about for reasons, even if you can trivialize it through summoning, because you can trivialize most things through summoning. Not Gale, because Gale is through the stratosphere with HP and stuff, but like some bosses you can make much easier that way.
Yeah.
Doesn't always make them good just because it's possible.
No.
Possible does not equal to good. But it is nice to like, the same way like just having people with you can make a lot of things like this fun.
Yeah.
Like I probably would. I mean, I don't think I would think that they were really well designed, but the more hateful chalices I would have enjoyed much more if I had Jeremy or someone else with me for them. And people who still play chalices now, that's what they do is like they get some people and they do some chalice dives.
Yeah.
It's like we're just gonna play some random ass chalices and just like have the co-op experience of Souls, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like if like that's super sweet. If that could be a fun time.
Yeah. Yep. So. I'm just very happy that people from the community are helping each other. Like that is that was an awesome story to read, and I'm happy that it happens. And I know that is not the only time that it has happened.
Yeah, for sure. Rick says by contact, I want to preface this by saying that I'm absolutely a Dark Souls 3 apologist. While the plot was bad and pandery, the lore was deeply unsatisfying, and the linear as fuck world design was a far cry from the glorious masterpiece that was the original. The individual level designs, set pieces, and encounters were, by and large, solid and well put together. It felt familiar and really good in the hands, though that broken poise is still bullshit. I really wanted to like the Ring City, but in the end, it really felt like getting back together with an ex. At face value, it feels familiar and good and comfortable, but you quickly remember why you broke up in the first place. It wasn't long before the bad outweighed the good again, and I kind of just couldn't wait for it to be over. Everything that was weak in the main game was distilled to its essence in the DLC, with the added bullshit of some absolutely egregious enemies and mechanics. Though I definitely had fun in parts and thought some of the new enemies were really enjoyable fights, it ended on a very sour note. Not because the Slave Knight Gale fight was especially terrible, but because he was the final materialization of Krusty definitely not showing up. Seriously, how does he make any sense as the final boss of the series, and what the fuck is that asshole even doing here? I cannot wait for you guys to give it the old Gary Butterfield and Kole Ross, Gary Bitterfield and Kole Ross treatment. I caught that. That it richly deserves. Bummer of an end to a still great series.
Yeah.
I don't think we were as harsh maybe as we could have been like on the DLC. Like even
I don't know. I don't feel like I left too much on the table.
No. We didn't leave tons on the table, but like it wasn't. I think that like the fact that we're just kind of tired, just shines through where like, compare it with the Chalice Dungeon, Chalice Dungeon episodes where like we are animated with hate. At this point, it is just like,
Yep.
It is what it is. I can't care about it that much.
Yeah. And by the time we recorded that episode, not too long ago, we had already decided what we were going to do. So like,
far with the show, not decided what was going to be in the episode before we. But yeah, it is really hard, and I think we discussed the central argument against this. Not that I agree with the argument against it, but the idea that when people criticize Gale as the final boss of the series, maybe they're not supposed to because this is a side story. Like the same way that Calamite is not, or Manus isn't the final boss of the series.
Right.
However, like this does feel different, and it's 20 levels higher than the actual game.
Yeah. And
also, I think a lot of people wanted to sub this in because the main boss of Dark Souls 3 is not super satisfying from a story perspective.
Yeah.
So something like they wanted to fight a character, and this ended up being the character.
Yeah. Gale is certainly a character.
Yeah, he's
waka
a character.
Waka.
He'll sleep tonight. Look at that cape.
Look at that cape. Let's see here. Chris writes in saying, "Hey there, episode boys. My experience with the Ring City was very mixed. Up to this point, I have loved all Soulsborne releases from FromSoft, in spite of whatever problems each release had. The Ring City was the first content release that brought me more frustration than fun. The visual presentation of all the content was excellent, but the difficulty has gotten unreasonable. As a Dex character using the Onikiri and the Ubadachi, or Chaos Blade, I was surprised to find that the first boss fight was a breeze. Then I got to the optional fight with Dark Eater Midir. Midir was a wall for me. Only when I decided to do a full respec into a pure sorcery build was I able to defeat it. Once I was fully in sorcery, I found that the Ring City difficulty was no big deal, where you could use Hidden Body to easily traverse the content and face melting and have face melting soul spears to kill everything. I expect that even the damned angels wouldn't be a big deal with invisibility. Still, I don't like that I need to change to a build that is, for me, much less enjoyable, just to feel like I had a shot at finishing off the content. I did like patches, though. I always get a big grin when that lovable scamp shows up.
Patches is a triumph.
Yeah, it's super weird because, like, Patches is always the most obvious callback. Like, he is literally just a character that has spanned all of this. And I've put some thought into that. Like, he's just kind of grandfathered in because he's always been there. But like he's always used in really cool ways, even if he isn't there directly. What's his name? Peter Serafinowicz' character was an awesome kind of like tag team with Creighton, and then having Spider Patches, like, for some reason that doesn't trip off the bullshit callback meter.
No, I accept, the same way I accept the Moonlight Greatsword showing up and everything. Like, it's just like things that are series Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Just feel different to me. You can't, once, an Easter egg has to be kind of rare to be an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't have like.
Gary, don't eat rare eggs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can eat rare eggs. Like, rare eggs are actually fine. Yeah. My mom used to say, I think I've told you this before, where she like thought it was crazy that anyone would eat, an egg that still had runny yolk. And the phrase she used was an up egg. And that was the only phrase she was like, you'd eat an up egg. You're telling me to eat an up egg. What are you talking about, Mom?
Yeah.
Like,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just you said the phrase rare egg, and it caught my attention.
No, I gotcha. It is like Billy Hatcher. That's rare, right? No, that's
No, that's Sega.
Yeah, that's Sega. So that's the difference between like an Easter egg and just a callback. Like Patches is an Easter egg because he's one or two things that show up. The demons that carry you from place to place are an Easter egg.
Yeah.
It was whereas like Siegward is not an Easter egg.
No.
He's got like entirely different dialogue. He's so clearly quoting the thing. It's whether the same thing shows up or something that kind of quotes it and winks about it.
Yeah.
Shows up as at least part of it. And that kind of like not honoring different builds is a big problem with Dark Souls 3. Like I was going through this as a Dex after they nerfed my luck build for no good reason, for PvP balance,
Yeah.
And the going through his Dex, and I was just like not doing enough damage to like even anything. Like I beat Gale and stuff, and like I had a pretty good bleed sword. I could bleed him, but bleed does if I'm doing 150 damage per strike, I can only get in a couple strikes, and maybe every 6 strikes I get an extra 500 damage, which is the equivalent of like 3 extra strikes. Like it's not as opposed to if I had a big fuck off high damage weapon, like I felt like my DPS was just not very good, and that was my experience for most of my decks run through a Dark Souls 3. Whereas strength was much more like when I played through the first time as a big strength guy, it was much more smooth for me because I got iframes, like I got hyper armor. Like I didn't realize there wasn't poise for a long time in the game because I was using a big weapon and had hyper armor.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I mean, pretty much all of my attempts to experiment were rebuffed, and I ended up doing a big fuck off weapon because that was the only way that I could be effective. The
thing with me is I was out of respecs.
Yep.
I ended up doing respecs because of the when they buffed the luck.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I wasn't like, hell, I'm going to join the Covenant and like do invasions to get tongues. Like, no. So limiting respecs is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Like that. Or, I mean, like doing it that way or like tying it to a Covenant reward. You can only find a couple of those naturally.
Right. Yeah. And then you only get like 5, or did they patch that out? The 5 respec seal.
I think it's still the 5.
Okay. Yeah.
That you can do. So moving on, Kevin says, by contact, while playing through the Ring City and fighting the Spear of the Church for the first time, something pretty funny happened to me, and I thought I'd share. I walked into the boss room not knowing what to expect, and a giant stood in the back of the room and monologued at me while I slashed at his ankles with a tiny sword. Eventually, he summoned the real boss of the area, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was the ultimate insult, another damn callback. The boss's health bar read, Artorias, Spear of the Church. I couldn't believe my eyes. This is pretty... Eventually, I lost the fight and raced back to the boss room to fight him again, my head full of questions. Why would Artorias be back here? How could he be? Why would he fight alongside the Painting Guardians? Why did he look like a Phantom Invader? The boss spawned again, but this time it was named Kickflip Hitler 420 or there's some such nonsense. That's when I realized the conceit of the fight and laughed at myself a bit for getting so damn annoyed. In the end, I was happy to see From reference the coolest boss fight in Demon Souls, when only a few minutes earlier I was annoyed at them for referencing the coolest fight in Dark Souls. That's very funny.
Yeah. Again, it's that throw of the dice. Yeah, I like that story. I don't know that I have much to add, but
yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's great.
Luke writes, the Ring City was a weird one. Visiting that amazing vista from the end of the main game was much more appetizing than an arbitrary DS3 version of a painted world. And when I got there, the weird twisted architecture was a pretty cool bit of level design. After that, an awkward opening highlighted the way it didn't quite fit into the main game. The irritating angel enemies felt like a deliberate jab at people who wanted angel lore. I preferred these bosses to the ones in Ashes, but I didn't need any more demons. The dragon was as bad as any Souls dragon fight. From really needs to borrow Capcom's Monster Hunter team before they try another one. And as for Abyssal Santa, I think he's referring to Gale there, I think that we all knew the one thing Artorias was lacking was a second stage with a load of over-the-top fire moves.
Yeah. Yep. The idea of like From putting those angels in there as a fuck you, I didn't even think about, and now that I'm thinking about it, it's irritating.
Yeah.
Like, because they have said like, that was a big thing that, I found hard to believe, but when you ask them, they said, no, Dark Souls 3 is completely full. Like that's a complete story. Mm-hmm. And that bums me out. And that's why, when we wanted Krusty to get there, it was always a little bit misguided because they told us Krusty wasn't going to get here.
Yeah.
Like they just like they weren't going to explain the things that we felt weren't adequately explained, because to them they said that it is adequately explained.
Yes.
So like them kind of saying "fuck you" about that is kind of irritating.
Yeah.
Hopefully that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So hopefully it was not that.
Yeah. Good. Doesn't feel great.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great. Oh, I'm being told "fuck you" from this thing that I've dedicated like a large portion of my life to.
Yep.
Matt says via contact. My problem with the final scene is similar to my problem with the Many Tiny Flames ending of the main game. They have a similar everything will be alright Disney aspect to them, which was rightly missing from Dark Souls 1. I find giving the painter the Dark Soul and listening to her childish hope makes for a delicate scene that did indeed move me. However, while a new game does demand a new message, I feel ultimately that this added message of renewal and new hope isn't one that belongs in the series. Dark Souls had a deeper and unique moral that has now been diluted. On reflection, the painter's promise of a new and gentle world came across as narcissistic, perhaps to the player who is playing the last game, and perhaps to the writer who has written the last game in the series. To finish on a positive note, the mandatory ending of the Ring City has you standing alone in a future that is basically dead. Your precious Dark Soul, actually effectively mocked by many characters such as the Pygmy Guide and Patches, is worthless as it has been shared among many and then consumed by Gale. Perhaps an angle that the writers were going for was to criticize the new good ending, the Lord of Hollows ending. By standing in a doomed future in the ruins of our precious Londor, we are motivated to wonder what power we have over the world, whatever our choice. I feel this possible takeaway is the closest to that original feeling of uncertainty we had when making the original decision at the end of Dark Souls 1. Yeah, that's hard to respond to because I didn't see either of those endings as that.
Right.
As I mentioned in the thing, I think the painter's ending is wry, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
They always say that. Like painters always think the world's going to be good. It never is.
Yeah.
It's always a nightmare zone. Mm-hmm. And then I never thought of the Londor ending as like a good ending where we like made it.
Right.
It quotes it quotes the Age of Dark ending visually so much that like it feels like the same sort of thing.
Yeah. you make a very good point about like standing in that arena with Gale dead and finally getting the Dark Soul and kind of being underwhelmed by what it actually is. As you look at the ruins of everything around you, like that is a powerful and striking moment, but it just falls under aesthetic to me.
Yeah. It would be, it's that would be a cool ending for it too.
Yeah.
Camera just starts zooming out. You still have control until you can't. You just see this limitless gray waste and then credits.
Yep.
I would have dug that.
Yeah. Like that actually would have been pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. And also Matt uses our word there, diluted.
Yeah,
Something
diluted. That was the theme word of the last 2 episodes.
Yeah. Now let's get on to some positive responses. I assure you, they're here. Eric writes, I've got some thoughts on Slave Knight Gale, aka Artorias 2.0. When I first encountered the final DLC boss and he threw that corpse at me, my stomach clenched. How dare you play on my love of the best and of one of the best and most tragic boss fights in the entire Souls series. Then I had to put aside my fury and disgust because, much like Artorias, Gale does not mess around. Once I started paying attention to the fight itself, the mechanics and strategies started recalling Artorias as well, and I began enjoying the fight for its own sake. The fight mixes familiar attack patterns from Artorias, so that I fell into the comfortable tough duel mindset with just slightly new enough moves that I still had to pay attention and learn. The second phase could easily lose that dumb crossbow machine gun, but at least he doesn't get a new health bar. After I beat him, I found myself appreciating the appropriateness of the similarities between Gale and Artorias, given the nature of their corruption by the dark. Interested to hear your take. Final question. What do you think it means that we can access this DLC from not 1, but 2 special warpy bonfires in the world? I understand the one in the kiln, but why in Ariandel? Is that where Gale got into the Dreg Heap?
Yeah, that was my idea.
Yeah. It's kind of like him, all of this DLC is Gale leading you along. Like he would have left that as saying like, hey, come along after you have, completed the business here.
It's actually the one that I understand less is the Kiln one.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's there is a gameplay conceit because you can do this before the first DLC.
Mm-hmm.
But that one I think is there. I mean, it has to be there because this is a sequel to the DLC more than a sequel to Dark Souls 3.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, and and largely I agree with you. I think the Gale fight is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that if it, other than the issues you brought up, I think the real big issue with it though is that it does illustrate that it's not a whole lot new that they're doing with boss fights anymore.
Yeah.
Even something like Gale is not that dissimilar to Elfrida. The Elfrida has the gimmick of the third boss or the third phase, but that's not that different from Maria. Mm-hmm. We're kind of out of new stuff to do with these dual fights, and they're they can be good. Gale is almost like a great fight, and as is pretty good, but I don't think they're that new. I feel like it's even if he wasn't explicitly masking or matching Artorias, he still kind of would. In a weird way, it's still at a wireframe level. Mm-hmm. It's I don't know. There's just not that much verb space
right
in these fights.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but of course, it feels like that because that's what hard Dark Souls duels feel like now. Sindre says, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I might not be. For me, the Ring City was perfect. Not too easy, not too hard. Maybe I had just the right level, or maybe I'd reached that mythical state of got good. It was nice to see the painter get the pigment so that through the painting, the humans can finally have their Age of Dark. I went in not really expecting to have all my questions answered, and all in all, I'm happy with what I got instead of being angry about what I didn't.
Yeah. Different expectations.
That's the definition of happiness. Be grateful for what you have.
Yep. Yeah. I don't have anything to add, but that is totally a valid response to this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you, I don't think I was ever going to love the story and lore stuff, but I would have been much more positive on it if it was frictionless.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about, is it reaching a flow state for you where it's not too hard, not too easy.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to have a game in. And I just didn't have that. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was at many points there was friction, and friction is huge. We talk about friction all the time. Friction makes a big difference.
It does.
So
Joseph writes, via contact, as a big fan of Dark Souls 3, I greatly enjoyed the Ring City. I played through it the first time on my base new game Soul Level 85 Glass Cannon Mage. My offensive crystal sorceries and crystal-infused Estoc carried me through the Ashes of Ariandel without much problem. But for this DLC, I had to rely on a spell that I had never thought to use on all of my previous playthroughs of Dark Souls 1 and 3. Hidden Body. Mind you, this was before the patch that made it effective against the angels in the Dreadkeep. Let me make sure I got that right. Yes, okay. So before it made it effective. Yeah. That wasn't a problem anyway, as the level organically laid out enough cover for me to dart through the area relatively safely and destroy the sources that spawned the angels, allowing me to explore my own pace after that first hectic run. Hidden Body, however, proved invaluable in the Ringed City itself. It allowed me to assassinate just about every enemy from a distance, whether it was disintegrating the generic hollows and shelled spellcasters with Crystal Soul Spear, performing drop attacks on the Herald Legion Knights from the Arches, or just straight up backstabbing the precursor Dark Wraiths. It was incredibly satisfying to methodically stealth my way through those majestic ruins like a ninja wizard. The Souls series has always been at its most compelling when it takes me out of my comfort zone. The Ring City was another strong reminder of the palpable pleasure that I get from overcoming challenges by just trying out something that I had never tried before. Maybe this wasn't the grand conclusion to the Dark Souls trilogy that I and many others expected lore-wise, but the specifics of the narrative and world building have always been secondary to the overwhelming atmosphere and the deliberate gameplay design that I believe shone through one last time. Along with Ashes of Ariandel, no, I'm not joking, I like that too, I feel these two DLCs are a good send-off to an all-time classic series.
No, thanks, Joseph.
Yeah.
I didn't use Hidden Body. I've heard other people who pour themselves a nice glass of Hidden Body Ranch as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool that, so sorcery has gotten much less powerful since Demon Souls and Dark Souls, right? It was barely a factor in Bloodborne, like its own version of spells. Dark Souls 2 made the early going of a sorcery run really, really difficult, and I very quickly ran away from doing sorcery in Dark Souls 3 to find out that it is a way for you to just outpace the challenges and get around them. That is cool and interesting that this little used spell would unlock this for you in a way that made it satisfying.
Yeah, it's cool. It's super cool, specifically that it's narratively, felt different, I guess, not narratively, but because that's pretty much what I did too, was run around, and just run past stuff without having Hidden Body. Hidden Body would have made it easier. Yeah. But it's an interesting take, and it kind of feels like Demon Soulsy, because Demon Souls had that kind of stealth element. Yeah, that was more important to it. Mm-hmm. And then atmosphere is such an interesting watchword too, because when people, the two things that come up when people talk about who like Dark Souls 3 more than we do, it is people who don't care about the lore and story, and then atmosphere and kind of the beauty of it comes through a lot. Yeah. And I'm not immune to that, but I feel in general, that's something I care about in games less than a lot of my contemporaries. Right.
Even among people on the podcast, mood and atmosphere, I think, are some of the things that video games can do really well, even if the story falls down. Actually making existing in this world, an aesthetic, not aesthetically, because those are kind of different things. Making it kind of an elevated thing is valuable, and it's something that video games do especially well. Here, there's too much on the line, I think, to just rely on it being pretty and it conveying a really strong mood. And so that is why I am not on Team Atmosphere, even though I acknowledge that it is atmospheric and it is pretty. It's not enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not I don't care for atmosphere.
I do. I'm not saying that.
I definitely do. It's just not enough. Yeah. So it's here it's not enough. A lot of times it's not enough. When when I look at so from Twin Humanities, our friend and yours, CJ, who is somebody who I dearly love, super sweet dude, hilarious, has really different values in games than I do, which is great and fine. But that's a big thing for him, is just how pretty something is. Yeah. And his joy isn't any less real. Oh yeah. His enjoyment of it is not he's not having fun, and that's what's important at the end. But that just won't do something for me as much. Yeah. It's hard for me to think of something where the atmosphere alone has carried me through something.
I mean, it has to go down to something super small and super compact.
like indie games that just focus on that. Like, something like In the Kingdom, right? Like, so that's like this, 20-minute long kind of first person shooter horror game has like an amazing atmosphere. Yeah. It's a 20-minute long game though. Like, and horror is another thing too. Like horror is a big thing. So like something like, what is that, that spooky house game that we just did for Check It Out Comrade by,
are you thinking of, oh man, I can't remember.
Yeah, boy, this is killing me. This is so dumb. Sorry. But it's okay because I'm gonna look it up now because it's where we're at. The Anatomy. Yeah. So like, Anatomy is awesome. Yeah. And that's mostly atmosphere. Yep. It has other things it's doing. It's not only atmosphere. Yeah. But a big reason why that works for me is that is like a short thing where like there's not a narrative on the line, there aren't mechanics on the line, so narrative like atmosphere can be enough. Yeah. It's always a strength. It's even a strength to the Ring City. It's just not strong enough. Right. Yep. And it's cool. Like the people who literally just like, this is why I play video games. Like I'm just into this, like feeling of like sense of place and being transported to a land, like take a look. It's in a book, like that kind of thing. And that's cool. Like, again, your joy is no less real. It just isn't enough for me. Yep.
And I like to think that we always at least mention it or bring it up or, hopefully sometimes even do justice to describing, what that stuff is and how it works, to giving a game, not just in the Souls series, but anywhere credit when it puts together this cohesive kind of experience for you,
Yeah. Like either atmosphere wise or aesthetically.
Yeah. Or mood, like any of those.
Yeah. 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 It's even then though it's really hard for me to feel like the Ring City stands up to something like the Research Hall. Yeah. In terms of atmosphere, like it might just be my predilection for horror. Yeah, that I'm speaking to.
the Research Hall and Aldia are like those are almost unfair comparisons.
Yeah, like that's somewhere where like it actually elevates. But the other things I like around it, I like more too. So that might be a difference. Yeah. But it's definitely something that like when I've tried to figure out like why other people like this more than I do, that's a thing that comes up a lot. Yeah, and like I get it. It's just different values. Yeah. And we have one final question. This is from Jason in our Just Funnin' category. This is not related to either a negative, neutral, or positive response to the Ring City. Jason says, I've noticed I've been less and less interested / satisfied with most of the Souls games with each entry from Dark Souls onwards. So much so that after buying the Ashes DLC and being so disappointed after playing through it that I haven't even bothered to and have now decided I won't buy the final DLC. I feel that I can get what I need out of it, lore-wise, etc., vicariously through the podcast discussion and videos like Vadi's and watching Franz, aka a German spy, play through it whenever that happens. I was feeling a bit like I was in the minority given some of the comments about it that I've heard. But more recently from your comments on the podcast and Twitter, it seems that it might not be the case. All this got me wondering if you guys didn't have the podcast to do and were just your regular Souls fan selves, do you think you would have even bought either Dark Souls 3 DLC, or do you think you'd have similar feelings to me? And after hearing the word of mouth from those you trust, not really liking it, would you, and not really adding anything new to the lore or gameplays wise, coupled with where the series has gone as a whole, would you have just considered your Souls journey more or less at an end? Hopefully I didn't mangle that last sentence too much.
Yeah, it was.
Considering the reputation it has, would you choose not to buy it?
Yes. No, that wasn't my question. I was confirming that like that is the question.
I was just re-saying for listeners.
Yeah. I'd still buy it. If I'm being honest, even as a private citizen, I love this series, and if I wasn't, doing this stuff, playing it over again, like that the only thing that would change, I think, is possibly that first playthrough would be a little bit more relaxed than the first time through. Covering it for it. I'm just talking about the whole series as like in general. Maybe that would have helped overall as it goes along. And maybe like I wouldn't have done the chalices and stuff down to Dark Souls 3, assuming everything is still the case. I would have bought it. I would have done the best that I could. But there are probably places where I would have stopped and put it down for a very long time and then written it off until I got the bug again.
Yeah. It could have been like months.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I just don't want to do this. Or like I would have maybe not done some optional stuff. Yeah. Like I could see a version that never beat the Nameless King, a version of that, but I still would have played it. Like even on the balance, now that we walk away from Dark Souls 3, I'm glad I played it. Yeah. Like it's still a good video game. Without the weight of expectations, I don't think even if I take away my expectations, I don't think it's a great video game. Right. But I think it's a good video game. And a good video game is worth playing. Yep. You know, and even the DLCs, I would have been curious as to what they did enough to see it for myself.
Yeah. And also, like, people can suffice watching the lore stuff and watching playthroughs. I'm not a person who watches Let's Plays. And I really don't, you know, aside from the people that we know from the show, I don't really pay a lot of close attention to like YouTube lore stuff. That isn't enough for me. I want to play it and do my own thing. So like for me personally, that wouldn't have sufficed.
Yeah, I would have still wanted to experience it, I think.
Yeah.
But I also think that's a fine way to experience it, and a fine way to experience like lots of games. Like,
yeah.
I know a lot of people who watch a lot more Let's Plays than I do. I very, very rarely watch them, and you do like learn about a lot of games you wouldn't otherwise learn about. You know, like it's a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just not something. It's not something I do. So I still would have gone through it. I don't regret my time with Dark Souls 3, even if I was demoralized by parts of it. You know, it is something, and I've said this 1,000 times. It's something that gets worse the more you think about it. To me. And if I hadn't been forced to think about it as much, I would have like been at the end of my first playthrough, probably never played it again, but just been like, oh, you know, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, and then just like walked away and been like, that was good. You know, not great, but good.
And then a month later, instead of firing that back up again, you would go back to Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 2
100%,
or Bloodborne. Yeah.
As opposed to like every other Souls game I've played, like I've ended and wanted to start my next playthrough.
Yeah.
You know, so it was never going to reach that length, but it would have been worth playing through for sure. You know?
Yeah. Yep, and I feel like I don't have any other summations. I think that we covered the gamut of responses from people. This has been an especially long appendix, but it's worth it, I think. Yeah, go back and listen to the previous episode for the final thoughts and things, at least for me. Gary, do you have anything?
Not really.
Yeah.
No, I feel like I've done my piece. I would be lying. Like I said, it's bittersweet. I would still be lying if I said I wasn't happy to be moving on.
Yep.
You know, it is what it is. Going to move on to stuff that I like more.
Yeah.
And there's a relief to Krusty not. Like now that Krusty can't come.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I just live in the camp.
Yeah.
Like there's it's like me, Mr. Black, Kearney, Jimbo. Like it, you know, it's just there's a sense of relief to that. Like it is. I'm gonna find this
Barney until he gets paid.
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna find this section of rot and just live in it rather than waiting for someone to come along and show me flame, because the flame's not gonna happen, and that's okay.
Yep.
You know, it's there's lots of other games out there.
Yep.
Including ones in previous series. If you are listening to this at the end, thank you guys very much for sticking with us. Like the show's not ending at this point, and we still have that victory lap thing. But there's something kind of momentous about the last piece of recording of new Souls content.
Yes.
On this show. You know, I mean, there's so many caveats on this as to be meaningless. Like, you know, Bloodborne 2 comes out, like we're gonna be doing something very similar to that, and you'll have your chance to write in, and we'll do this again. But you know, this might be the last one of these for a while. Thanks for everyone who's ever written in.
Yeah.
We really do appreciate it. And like, you know, it's a big part of the show. We've, you know, early on when we made Watch Out for Fireballs, we made this as part of the structure because like we want to know what other people think. And that's still true, you know, and even though this is maybe the season in which people have disagreed with us the most, it's still been really great reading your thoughts.
Yeah. Your responses add texture and perspective that we otherwise would have lacked without your direct involvement. And that is something that has really enriched the Souls experience for me, you know, as somebody who does this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you like this show, or real quick too, do our survey.
Yes,
go to the show notes and please do our survey that we talked about at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. And also, if you're curious about the details of that, we go into much more length on an episode of Watch Out for Fireballs that is specifically an announcement for Watch Out for Fireballs 2.0.
Yes, the code name you can still refer to as Watch Out for Fireballs.
Yeah, that's fine. Like we're not going to refer to it as WAF 2.0, and you know, after it's launched. But right now, that is
it's WAF Infinity.
Yes,
that's what we're referring to as. So if you want to hear about WAF Infinity, you can there. If you want to support us as well, you can always support us on Patreon. You go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. You can check out a bunch of rewards, which will be changing very soon. Tiers will be changing very soon. But the thing that doesn't change is the fact that you are choosing to support your boys you like.
Yes.
And if you like these boys, give them a couple bucks. Make some noise for the boys.
Yeah, make some noise for the boys. Even if it is a bittersweet time for this show, your support is helping us do awesome things in general related to games and otherwise. And we're incredibly grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then ratings, reviews, iTunes, all those things. The show, even though it is eventually ending, is still evergreen. So the shows will be around. If you have a friend who's like, I'm getting into Demon Souls, I don't understand World Tendency, throw them our way, man. Like we would still love for them to check it out.
Yeah.
And we put this time into kind of creating this document, and we want people to use it.
Yes. So. If you have any thoughts about Neo, Hollow Knight, or Let It Die, head over to Duckfeed.tv/contact and write those in. Please separate those out. Just one game per response. That will help make sure that nothing gets lost.
Yes, please. I think that's probably about it.
Think so?
Yeah. Thanks very much for listening. And until next time, Cole, what can they do?
I
put you on the spot because it's a momentous last episode.
Yeah, no, it's a nice mirror to the first. They should. Let's just do it. They should praise the sun.
Yeah, there we go. I don't think we've done that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, praise the sun.
Umbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
And this is going to get us a side-scrolling Solaire spinoff as the next From thing.
God damn it.
Solario Brothers. Like I would actually play the shit out of that.
Oh yeah.
Like I think that would be funny. I hope they don't do it, but I think that'd be funny.
All right.
I'm not soup.
I'm not soup.
Like,
I'm neither soup nor a worm.
Or bread. Like it is just